Hey, Kels. This is a different
Hi,
setting
Dyl.
than usual. It's purple
I
here,
know.
which means it's time for FRAMEWRECK. I wonder where our other friend is here who's joining us.
Where
Oh,
could he be?
I think I just found him. MattmanXIII. MattmanXIII. What happened to thy eyes?
Hello, Dylan. Kelsey, I can hear you. I can sense you. Unfortunately, I can't see right now, which means that my other senses are heightened, like my ability to tell the future.
The future, like what's gonna happen on this very show, this very broadcast?
Yes, Dylan. Yes, I've seen it. For instance, you're going to do an Owen Wilson impression at some point.
But MattmanXIII, Owen Wilson is not in thy film.
He is not. He is not, but I can sense it. I can tell. Kelsey, you will become so worked up, you're going to mispronounce a city in upstate New York.
Okay, oddly specific, but I guess
Dylan,
something I can see myself doing.
Yeah, I have seen it, and you will. Dylan, you and I will have the same worst quote, worst line in dialogue. Kelsey, you and I will have the same best actor. I see one more thing. I will not be starting this episode in the way I normally do today. Kelsey will start the episode.
FRAMEWRECK.
What a story, Mark.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to FRAMEWRECK, another marvelous FRAMEWRECK, if you will. The first marvelous FRAMEWRECK, the first Marvel-ous FRAMEWRECK, if that makes sense. All the FRAMEWRECks are marvelous, Mr. Matt, Mr. MattmanXIII, Mr. MattmanXIII. I don't know. How's it going, Matt? We're back with FRAMEWRECK.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this. I'm a little under the weather, but I'm medicated up, and I'm excited to do this. So if I start to nod off at some point, you know why. But I think it's gonna be full of awesomeness, so I won't need to.
Yeah. Hey, at least you're not blind, right? Kelsey, not to insult any of our blind listeners, we love you all, but it's a MattmanXIII reference. You'll get it if you've seen the movie. Kelsey, we're joined with Kelsey today. Her first appearance on FRAMEWRECK proper. How you doing, Kels? Welcome.
I'm doing so good. I'm so honored to be here on my first FRAMEWRECK episode, and I'm so excited to be talking about this movie in particular, because what a wild ride. What a viewing experience this movie is.
Here, wait, Kels, I'm going to start moving my lips. I want you to say something totally random about 0.5 seconds after I start mouthing. Got it? Let's just try this. Ready?
Okay. Last night I had a dream. I was a giant pickle, and it was fun.
Okay. You just watched all of MattmanXIII.
Yeah, god damn it. Yeah, we'll definitely get to that, because that's, oh my god.
That is a prime example of our ADR bit.
Yeah.
Oh
wow.
That's MattmanXIII in a nutshell for you. But yeah, this is our Marvel-ous FRAMEWRECK. We're having Kelsey on here to talk about MattmanXIII, a movie we already covered on our podcast, but we watched it fresh out the theater with not a lot of idea of like how the critics and audiences were responding to it. We were just kind of giving our honest opinions. But then we brought it up and we're like, this could be like so bad it's good. Like it's teetering on that precipice. Unlike some other just bad Marvel movies. And then we were like, you know what? Let's maybe table this idea. And then Matt was like, I love it. Let's roll with it for FRAMEWRECK. But then also we've been doing our first Avenger Files, and the next film on our list is Howard the Duck. So we were like, why don't we have Matt on our show on Marvel-ous Movie Mondays? So it kind of becomes this little like crossover event. So you're getting this week. Next week you'll get Howard the Duck. It'll be a really cool like twofer of Matt and Kelsey, which is like, you can't ask for anything better,
Yes, exactly. I'm very, very excited for all of this. This is the dream come. I've been wanting to do a crossover with us for a while, and I'm excited that we're finally doing it. And I'm hoping that it becomes I won't say regular, because I don't want to invite myself on your show, but I do hope it becomes a regular thing where we do more crossover stuff. So
yeah, crossovers are always fun. I mean, I grew up watching the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour every year. It was the best hour of television for every Nickelodeon kid. Jimmy Neutron and Timmy Turner. But yeah, we are here with Madam Web. Her frame wreck connects us all. And we are here. Matt actually is the one on the channel who hasn't given his opinion on the film. Like, people know what Kelsey and I feel about the film, at least from a first viewing. But Matt, you have never talked about this film on this channel. You had just watched it for this. So normally I'd like turn it over to the guest first and be like, what was your first opinion? But we already know Kelsey's opinion if you listen to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays. So I want to know, Matt, did you like this film in a so bad it's good way? Obviously we will get to the verdict as we talk more about it, but like, what are your first impressions of this, since like Kelsey and I know each other's first opinions on it and we are kind of in the same boat? But I would love to know yours, Matt.
This movie is so wild. Okay. There is so much in this that is just unhinged, that is great. Like, it's and some of it comes from just like, it's bad writing. There's a lot of bad dialogue. There's a lot of weird things. They're obviously trying to set up a series, a new film series, and so like there's a lot of that. But there's also a lot of like just baffling choices that they make, and some of it comes from that my wife is a nurse, so there's things that I see where I'm just like, that doesn't make sense just in general. There's also, I don't know, it's just, there's a lot. And yes, I'm excited to get into like the really what makes this movie tick, because it's kind of incredible. Like, I've watched it twice, like I do with all of these movies. I was actually excited to watch it the second time though, because after the first one, I was like, what just happened to me? So I got to watch it the second time. And the second time was just as fun to endure. Yeah. So yeah,
I think, you know, we both kind of compared it, Kelsey, when we talked about it to like Morbius, because that was like a very recent example of like a movie that everyone was like, oh my god, that's so terrible, like it's gonna be a meme and all this stuff. But like, it was just kind of boring, you know, like we watch him, we were just kind of like, this is like, like it's kind of boring, not that great. Whereas Madam Web, I feel like, has a different kind of quality to it, because it's like one of those movies that you actually kind of want to watch again. It's not like a movie that is off-putting in the sense of like, ugh, we have to watch this again. It's like, we have to watch this again, and like, I'm intrigued, you know. And I think that's what's most special about Madam Web in comparison to something like Morbius, or just like other movies of like the 2000s ilk, or even some of these older First Avenger files that Kelsey and I've been covering on our channel, where it's like, on our show, where it's like, you know, there's so many just stale, boring superhero movies, but this is kind of an odd exception where like it's anything but that, but it's also very bad. So it's like this kind of weird anomaly, which makes it perfect for this show, I think. But Kels, like your second time now, how are you feeling having spun a little bit more of this web that is Madam Web?
Yeah, so obviously, like you said, Dyl, we watched it when it first came out in theaters, so we really only had that one watch to go off of when we gave our review. And to be honest with you, I wasn't really rushing to the streaming services when it finally hit streaming. So this really was the second time I'd ever watched it. And I was like Matt said, I was pretty excited to watch it again, just because I was like, I really need to like dive in deep to like how like poorly they fumbled this ball when it came to this movie. It's almost fascinating. Like this needs to be like broken down and like studied. Like, I hope like film majors everywhere are like studying this movie and like what happened to it.
Yeah, almost like we need a show for that, where we can talk about amazing clusterfucks that happen.
Is that what you guys do here?
Oh my god!
Okay, that's perfect.
You've come to the right place, Kelsey.
Oh my god!
Cool.
Did we just crack our show? Matt, did you predict this?
We did it.
God. Oh, this is deja vu. Woo.
Okay, so generally when we start this, we start with just some of the production notes on it. So I'm just going to run through those real quick. This was written by Matt Chapmond and Burke Sharpless and Claire Parker and S.J. Clarkson.
You're telling me the writer's name was Sharpless?
Sharpless.
Come on.
Well, this movie ain't dull, though. This movie ain't dull, so, but it's also not very sharp. So.
It was directed by S.J. Clarkson. This was her first feature movie, but she's done a lot in TV. She's actually done a lot of really good stuff in TV too. So like it's she's a British TV person. She did episodes of Succession. She did Jessica Jones. She did 2 episodes of Jessica Jones, 2 episodes of Defenders. Like she has been in the Marvel space before, but also she's done a lot in British TV. But got lots of acclaim for that. So I think that she was handed a lemon with this, unfortunately, is the problem. Because Matt Chapmond and Burke Sharpless are the people responsible for Morbius. They were hired for this after they made Morbius, and I guess Sony was like, hey, you did that, so why don't you take another shot at it?
I feel like these movies have just been in production for so long. I don't know if you have the tally for how long, but I remember Morbius has been on the cutting room floor for so long, and then it finally got released after delays and delays and delays. It's almost like the New Mutants thing. And same thing, I feel like with the Madam Web. I don't know if it was like a lot of delays or a lot of time, but it was definitely delayed some. There were reshoots and all that.
It was shot in 2022.
There you go.
Released in 2024. Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes me feel like they were making this before they knew how people would respond to Morbius. But it's also like, you really don't know how people are going to respond to Morbius. Really? You really think people are going to think that's good? But maybe they did. And you know, it's very funny. It's like, you know, you're putting all the eggs in this one basket before you've even seen how much people like the omelet, you know? That's my analogy of the day, I guess. But it's like, you got to wait and see how people respond to the first one before you put all your eggs in the same basket again, you know? Because maybe the basket has a hole in the bottom and you just didn't know. And now you have 2 baskets with 2 holes. My second analogy of the day, that doesn't make any sense, but you know,
you lost me at the first basket.
It's fine. Either way, probably should have waited to see how Morbius did before like putting all their faith in these guys to do it once again with a property that has already been controversial because you can't necessarily name drop Spider-Man. So it's like that kind of issue of like, they keep trying to make this relevant to the Spider-Man timeline without making it a Spider-Man movie because they still want the property, but they want to be relevant at the same time, even though a lot of people think they're not relevant because they don't have Spider-Man in it. But then this also kind of does have Spider-Man in it, even though it's never named, but also his parents and Uncle Ben is there. But like, that's the whole thing. It's like, I feel like it's an identity crisis of trying to be relevant, and in doing so, making the movies worse because of it. And I think they could just probably do better if they were to just stick to their own lane and embrace what they are. But I think they try to take themselves as seriously as some of the MCU, and that's kind of where these Sony movies kind of fall apart.
Here's the thing: Spider-Man is in it. We see him at the very end of the movie. Baby Peter Parker. And the reason for that is that in order to keep the rights, you have to make a certain number of movies within a certain amount of time with that character in it. Putting him at the end of this movie resets that clock for them. And they didn't say his name, which I thought was a little bit weird because, like, Sony owns the rights, so I imagine they could. Maybe Feige was like, "Don't do it," but it doesn't feel like they could have because they do own the rights to that.
Right. Well, so, and I thought another thing that was very interesting is that they don't say May either. They say, "Oh,
that was the other thing I was going to say."
Who are you dating? And he's like, and he kind of just doesn't answer, and she's like, "Oh, it's serious." I'm like, well, it just didn't answer. Like, what? And then, but it's because I think they can't say May Parker because that is an MCU name now. But Ben Parker is fair game because we've never seen Uncle Ben in the MCU. So this is their way of being like, oh, well, we can take Uncle Ben. Like, that's on our draft board.
But the thing is, like, the best part of the movie. It is an MCU. It is an MCU. They are MCU names now, but they are Sony movies, so they can say them.
It's so weird, yeah.
So
but they're also in the Avengers films, which creates an even weirder.
It is weird, but that's part of. I think it's part of the deal that they have with it. But the
web connects them all.
Here's the thing: like, you think that's because they teased the name of his girlfriend and the name of the child. You think those are Chekhov's names, and the gun never goes off. You think you're going to get to the end, and she's going to be like, "Oh, it's Peter, my little Peter." Or whatever, my little Peter. They say, little baby Peter, and he could have been like, I can't wait for May to meet him. That something like that. Like they could have They did the Chekhov name early in the movie, They needed to pay it off in the third act, and they never did.
They spend a whole 5 minutes playing a name game. They literally play the name game. It's like it's. I don't want to get too graphic, but they're blue balling the audience. They're getting you to the edge, and then they're just like, just kidding, balloon pop, and it's like, wait, playing another game. We've only guessed 3 names. That's not a fun game. Yeah, the IP stuff is just the funniest part. And you did kind of mention it too, Matt, the sequel building. And I know we usually talk about legacy, but this film has not been out long enough to talk about a legacy. But like, they are setting up like these new superheroes to where like the marketing was all about like these 3 girls in their superhero outfits, and we see maybe like a minute and a half of it, which I think is just the most bizarre part of it as well. Is like, you know, this really isn't a superhero film if you think about it. Like, how much time do people actually spend in costumes fighting? Not a lot. The villain, I guess, at times puts on a little kind of pseudo Spidey outfit and does his climby thing, but like, we really don't see anyone in capes or masks or suits at all. Right. Really. You know,
well,
this is just kind of a thriller in a way.
That's kind of a first movie in a series thing, where you don't spend a lot of time with the person in the suit. You know that, but here's the person who suffered the most, in my opinion, from this being a first movie, and obviously they were going to be playing a different type of character later, is Sydney Sweeney. She was completely miscast in the version of the character she's playing now. The version of her who is Spider-Woman in the comics, she's perfect for that. She's completely miscast in the version that they are showing her in this movie. And it sucks that we're not going to get to see her play that version of the character, because this suffered so bad. So she suffered the most out of this, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Matt, because I had the same thought when watching this. I'm like, she just feels so out of place, and I don't think it's 100% her fault. Like, even out of the 3 girls, like, her character Julia is kind of like the most poorly written, because you have like the cool skater girl who's like edgy and doesn't give a fuck and flips off the ambulance, like whatever, and then Isabella Marcet's character is, you know, this like kind of brainiac, like she kind of has these like sciencey and like mathy moments sometimes. And then the entire time, Sydney Sweeney is like, guys, like, stop fighting. Come on. Like she's just like timid and like shy and like dressed like a schoolgirl for some reason. Her costume that she wears throughout the most of this movie is awful. Like, it's not even just like, it's kind of like gross to like put her in a, like a schoolgirl outfit, but it's also just like doesn't fit her right and doesn't like match and makes her look frumpy and weird for some reason. I'm like, that whole like costume just should have been scrapped, but she is just really, really out of place in this film for me.
And what's so interesting is like the Sydney Sweeney thing, like we've seen her pop off in the last 2 years and kind of become like this modern, like essentially sex symbol for a generation. You know, she's taking these risks, doing these really like provocative dramas like Euphoria, Anyone But You, which is a little less provocative, but still like an adult drama, you know, trying to like normalize, you know, sexuality in film, which is a big part of her whole belief. Like she wants to make these movies where she's like very exposed, and because she wants to kind of create this sense of body positivity and also embracing sexuality as a positive thing in films and making movies sexy again. Like, she's been a big advocate for that. And then this film, it feels like they're trying to like say like, oh no, we're not going to sexualize Sydney Sweeney, we're better than that. But it's also like, but she stands for not sexualizing her, but like trying to like empower women in that way. So it's like they're almost trying to fix a problem that she didn't even have. If she was uncomfortable by it and she was always like, I feel like the media just overly sexualizes me and all this stuff, then like that's different. But I feel like she's almost like made that a part of her empowerment, to where like now the movie's trying to say, no, we're going to put her in glasses and show a different, unique side of her. But then also in the marketing, they're showing her in the Spidey suit, which is meant to appeal to younger men and, you know, people who are attracted to her, to get them in the seats to pay money for a movie where Sydney Sweeney wears spandex. And it's like, it's so confusing because it's like, it's a lot of mixed messaging. I feel like the marketing team was not in the same boat as the production team, which was not in the same boat as Sydney herself, to where everyone's on a different page about what they want to do with her character specifically. Because I think you cast her in that role and there's a certain expectation for the audience, and it's fine to defy that expectation and play against type. But I also just don't know if I've seen enough of her work to know if she can play against type as well, like in this role especially. Like she could play against type, but not this far away from type.
Right.
There's just some things that actors do stronger than others, and I just don't think the meek, timid kind of like go with the crowd kind of character is her. Like I just feel like she doesn't fit that. And that's not to say she's not a good actress. I think she's great. She was in Immaculate this year, and she was quite literally immaculate in that film. But like, I think this role underserves her, but she also doesn't bring anything necessarily to the role to elevate it. But I don't, like Kelsey, you said, like I don't think it's her fault either. It's a weird mismatch because those three girls are such a core of the movie too. You need to like all three of them,
Right. And there's two things that going off what you said. There's two different things that go with that. Number one, it's like they're saying we're not sexualizing her, even though that's something that she would be fine with, but they put her in this schoolgirl outfit, so they're not sexualizing her in the way that she would want to. They're sexualizing her through the male gaze, which is completely the opposite of what she wants. Number two, the thing that really, because this was shot in 2022, we didn't really know who Sydney Sweeney. We knew who she was. We didn't really understand the full grasp of who she was yet because she hadn't fully popped off yet. So it comes with that thing that we see from a lot of actors right before they hit big, is they're kind of miscast or in things that you wouldn't necessarily think they'd be in, or playing roles you wouldn't necessarily think they'd play early on. The problem is, and this was similar with certain movies that Chris Hemsworth was in right before he became Thor. Cabin in the Woods is one, but there's several that came out after he played Thor that had just kind of been shelved. That this is one of those things where it's like, now we know who she is, and this movie is now coming out, but it wasn't. If it had come out before like Anyone But You and all of her last 2 years worth of stuff, if it had come out back then, it might not feel quite as weird, because it might feel like, because we might not know exactly how much she could do. Right. But now it does feel weird. But I just think she suffers from that. Because here's the thing. If you see her when she's in the Spider-Woman costume and hanging upside down, she does that little neck tilt and stuff like that. That's exactly who Sydney Sweeney should be playing. It's exactly the kind of character she could play. It's that cute. It's just that is the aspect of the character, and it's such a quick moment. But it does represent the aspect of the character that she could play well, and that her character would have become if they had kept going with this. But unfortunately, they never will. So she just gets stuck in this character that she was not meant to play. It is basically a problem. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if that's been confirmed. If you know, Matt, that they're definitely not making any more future projects.
It didn't make any money, and was memed to death. So I think. It's probably not. I think it's the consensus.
I'm just saying, all I can see Sony still taking like one last chance on like a Sydney Sweeney like standalone.
I think they would go with her over anyone else, or maybe she was in She was in the new Alien too. Like Isabella Merced could also maybe front her own, but she needs like one last like big star vehicle, because she's a supporting role in Alien Romulus. She was Dora, but like that didn't really take off. It was a fun experiment, but she didn't take off. Instant Family is one of my favorite movies, but like that barely got seen by anyone. So I do think she also could have that potential. She was just in that new John Green movie on HBO, but it's also like a straight to streamer. So like she needs like a big star vehicle, and I think you could also do something with her. The problem is I don't think you could do it with these three girls and Madame Web again. That's the problem. Right. It's like they've already kind of run this too short, because I think the end really sets up like, all right, now here we've arrived, and it's like that might be the arrival and the ending. like I don't think it's going to go further beyond it, because it's almost kind of like setting up a pseudo X-Men in a way, where it's like you got the blind wise one, as like the mother, and then you have these like three kids who are gonna have their own adventures and stuff. But I really do think they might have to just ride the Sydney Sweeney route solely off of that star power, and not necessarily go full blown Madame Web, which then we can segue to like just the actual Madame Web story of it all, because we talked about the girls. Like the girls I think are, if you were to follow that storyline through, like I think that is the most engaging one probably. But then you also have all the Madame Web stuff, her own adventures, her journey as a paramedic, and all the visions and the time jumps and the dizzy camera work and all that. Kelsey, having watched it again, how are you feeling about all that stuff? The dizzying kind of flashback, flashing forward, all that stuff.
So, Dyl, it's clear now watching it the second time that all of this editing and all these effects and all of these jump cuts and the tilting of the camera and these like flashing and everything, it's all very much so obviously like tape and glue. Like it's all very much like trying to like keep something together. Like they're very obviously just, like, we'll just like, put this like rug over this huge mess and like hope no one trips over it and it'll be fine. And it's almost like I was like getting confused because I guess they had just like strategically used all the shots where you kind of can't see all of the actors' mouths on screen. Like that also felt like a strategic choice because even like without all the editing and everything, even when it was just like a shot of like two characters in the screen, it feels like somehow there's always something blocking like one or either both of their mouths. Like towards the end of the film where Dakota Johnson's character goes back to Peru again because she's like, I need to investigate what my mom was doing. So she goes to Peru and then back to New York in seemingly one day. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, but like a runtime of like 8 minutes too. It's very short.
Like goes all the way to Peru, and there's this one shot where she finally like meets up with the man who like delivered her in like the water birth, meets up with that guy, and there's this shot from afar where they're walking through the forest, and it just feels like there's strategic like branches like purposefully covering their mouths as they're walking through, so you can't tell what they're saying or if the audio that we're hearing is not matching up with their lips. You know what I mean? Like it's so like distracting in a way because once you spot one really botched ADR moment, you kind of find yourself like hunting for it for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways of negatives for this movie was the just the style and the manic energy of the editing, but also the ADR. Yeah. And I do think they do go hand in hand. That's something I noticed, especially on rewatch, Kels, and we've all rewatched this film now because Matt, you watched it twice. I think you can tell the first time the ADR is noticeable, especially in those still moments, as you said, like their mouths aren't moving. There's a lot of shots from behind someone's shoulder as they're talking away from the characters, because honestly, they probably did all these reshoots and didn't have time to actually record the dialogue in time. So they just had to like use what they had. It was almost like stock footage for them to lay sound over it. And then, you have, all these different cuts and stuff. But I do think, as you said, Kels, it is a way to mask the fact that they don't have that actual dialogue being spoken by those actors in that moment, in that scene, to where they really do go hand in hand, to where it's like, I almost don't hate the editing as much now, because I hated the editing when I saw it. That was my least favorite part, but I almost don't hate it as much because it's like, it almost feels like it was necessary to hide all the different cracks. And, it was almost like trying to put together a puzzle where all the pieces are just edges. I don't know the right analogy for that. I'm going to stop making analogies, but it really does feel like it's not the fault of the editors. They were trying to salvage what was already at fault,
No, it feels like when you're so sorry, Matt. It just to go off your puzzle analogy, it just feels like when you're so sure that a piece should fit in like in one of your puzzle, and you're like, no, that has to be it, but it's not quite working. You just kind of force it anyway. That's what the editing feels like. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh no, I was just gonna agree. Like I feel like the editors were probably the heroes of this piece. Like if anything worked, it's because they were able to salvage something. Like it kind of seems like Sony dropped off this mess to them and said, make this work, please. It's and it didn't, but I feel like if anyone, like if this was going to do anything at all, it was because the editors were able to do things like salvage the problems with the audio and all that stuff. So yeah, I feel like they might be the heroes of this piece, whether for better or worse here. But.
Yeah, and I did see this in IMAX the first time, and it was very, very disorienting because there's a lot of quick cuts. That stuff, it's like they must have been salvaging a lot because it was so manic and distracting. It's a little bit easier on the eyes at home, but I don't know if you guys had that same experience. But yeah, just a lot of just jarring cuts and just very puzzling choices. But I do think a lot of it, yeah, is because they're trying to salvage something that cannot be shown in just a linear base way. It's like they have to cut to show that there's no problem, but I think it also draws attention to the problem at the same time. So it's like, I think it's that kind of unintentional intentionality debate that we always have, Matt, on the show, where it's like, what was intentional and what was intentional ended up being unintentionally funny for another reason, you know, which I think works, you know.
Well, yeah. And as far as what's intentional in this case, I can tell you that Sony wanted this to be Sony's Doctor Strange. So that is intentional. That was all intentional. That whole thing where they're doing the quick cuts and trying to make it kind of discombobulating a little. I think that was intentional. I just think that the editors probably didn't have a lot to work with, so they did the best they could. But yeah.
Matt, what else?
Yeah,
what
they
else
were
makes
like
this great?
handed the.
Go ahead, Kels. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say they were like handed the Titanic and they were like, make it float. And the editors were like, should we start in the boiler room? Like, what do we do?
That's great. Yeah. So we talked about the style. Yeah, like Matt, what else is there to talk about in other senses? Because there's still so much to unpack here.
There's so much. I would like to talk about some of the physics issues with this movie, and I don't just mean like you know, I don't necessarily mean every like that the physics is all wrong in this. What I'm saying is like there are certain things in the real world that don't make sense for this movie, and usually I'm the kind of person who says whatever the movie says is true is true.
Yeah, it's a suspension of disbelief. Yeah,
right. I don't. If the movie says this thing that isn't true in our world is true, as long as they don't break that rule, it's fine. However, there are a lot of things that just make me that stretch my credulity in this movie. Number one, and this again comes from being the husband of a nurse. How often CPR seems to save people in this movie? Because CPR, the percentage of people who can be resuscitated is very small. It's not common that they're able to resuscitate you CPR. That is a sad statistic thing that for me to tell you, and I'm sorry if I'm worrying anybody out there.
Yeah.
The only person in this movie that wasn't able to be saved by CPR was the guy who had a wound so bad that while she was doing it, her hands got covered with blood. Like that was he didn't die from her not being able to resuscitate him. He died from the trauma.
Yeah, it's not as simple as like it's not simple as like the Heimlich maneuver. You know, it's like, oh, you're choking, but oh, yeah, you're good. Like it's a lot more involved than that, and it's not as quick a fix. And they make a lot of attention to it too. Like there's a whole scene meant to like show this character bonding, which is like now interlock your fingers and push, and it goes for like 3 minutes, and I'm like, all right,
and then it shows them working together and having to trade off on that. And that while the CPR does pay off in the end because they have to resuscitate her, them having to trade off does not pay off in the end. And I'm like, they didn't really like. It feels again, it's another Chekhov's thing that they don't pay off later, where it's like, okay, they showed us that they can rely on each other and trade off on things when they're getting overwhelmed, and they never really paid that off in the end, even with CPR at the end. But they have to, there's just so much CPR in this movie, and it works every time except for the time that the guy was basically he died from literally his insides being on his outsides. Like that is the only time that CPR did not work, and that will not fix CPR will not fix that. So CPR worked so often, and then when she was brought back the first time she was brought back with CPR, she was like, it's fine when your heart stops, and when it starts again, you're fine. You don't have to. That's all that matters. She downplays it so hard. Guys, friends, let me tell you, that is not all it is. Like it is, yes, your heart comes back, but you're not just fine. You don't just get to go on with your day. You have to go to a doctor. You have to you need to be checked out. You need to rest. You just because your heart has started beating again does not mean you're just that everything's exactly as it was. So if you watch Madam Web and have taken away that if my heart stops beating, it's fine. They could just restart it easily, obviously. And once it starts, I'm good. Don't take that lesson from it because it's wrong.
I think there's a lot of moments in this thing where Dakota Johnson in particular really downplays a lot. Like, I feel like that's just like a thing that she does, which for some movies really works. In some movies, it really doesn't. And I feel like for like, you're commanding this movie that eventually you're going to be the Professor X of this group. Like, you are the leader. And like, you know, she's at the baby shower and she's like, yeah, my mother died. And I didn't have a mother. Oh, she died in childbirth. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Like, you're going to be fine. Like all that weird stuff. It's like what? Like, it's just so puzzling. Some of her line deliveries, it just feels like, it almost feels like she doesn't want to be there. And I hate that because like, I know every actor probably wants to be, you know, acting. Like, that's their passion, that's their dream. But like, performances like this make me wonder, like, how much did she want to be there? Because there are some actors in this thing who really are giving it their all. I think all three girls, even if they're miscast, like, clearly are having an energy and a passion for these characters, probably because they know they're getting the spinoffs. You know, Adam Scott has passion there. Like, he's coming to do his job. He does his job. Like, even Tahar Rahim, who is, we'll talk about him, but like, he's doing something, you know, like, it just feels like she's the one reining it in, which is like the absolute last person who should be in a movie like this. And we covered Catwoman, Matt, and it's like Halle Berry ate up every ounce of catnip on that set, regardless of how good or bad the writing was and what her direction was and how she was dressed, how restricted she was, how bogus the direction was. But she did it. She mothered that shit. I don't think
that movie didn't fail because she didn't care. Like, that's that shit.
Yeah, and I just get that vibe from her here, just in her subtle reactions, you know.
Well, here's the thing with that, and I agree with you that she does seem to be phoning it in a little. But here's the, and this is okay. I'm going to predict that we're going to talk about this on a future draft day that happens around my birthday. But I'm going to say that Dakota Johnson is just so uneven as an actor for me. She sometimes is great. Cha-Cha Real Smooth, I bought every second of her in that movie. She's excellent. She's wonderful in that movie. But a lot of the time in her movies, I can't. Peanut Butter Falcon, she's excellent throughout that entire movie. Most other movies that she's in, it's kind of like, okay, I don't really feel her into this movie. Like, it's not very good performance. So she very much is. Sometimes she delivers a great performance. Sometimes she delivers nothing performance. In this one, there is something about her, and it's just so weird. And this is one of the things we can talk about with this character is that she is supposed to be off-putting at first, but she does it in such a weird way. And Sydney Sweeney's character does call it out at one point. She's like, "You saved my mother," and then we're super awkward about it after. That when she's like, "Oh, I like being weird about the kids drawing," and like she's often very off-putting, and that can be done extremely well. But Dakota Johnson does not do it very well at all, and that's the major problem with this role, is that there are problems with the structure of the movie and the way it was written. Why would her character even put a blank sheet into the thing? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
How about if your mom's dead,
you,
if your mom's dead and you don't have a memory of her, don't play this game with them. Like, that's right. Really the don't.
It's almost like the sociopathic thing of like, I want people to ask me, like, I want to talk about this because I'm emotionless and don't give a fuck about the enjoyment of everyone around me. I'm like,
exactly. So, but if we're going to go this route where she, like a psycho, puts a blank piece of paper there so she has to bum everyone out in the room, at least Dakota Johnson could have played that as something like that, or at least in a way that didn't seem like she was completely phoning it in. And that scene completely didn't work because she didn't seem to care about the message, about how she was portraying this situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, Kelsey, what are your thoughts on Dakota Johnson in this thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's very I go back and forth with like how I feel, because I feel like her performance is so inconsistent in this. And I don't know whether to blame her or the writing, but like you're saying, Matt, like they almost wrote her like I wrote it down in my notes somewhere. I was like trying to find it, but they almost wrote her like almost like she's so like non-humanly like aloof. Like it's okay. I found it. It's literally, I said, why did she put a blank piece of paper in the baby game during the shower and then own up to it? Like, she's so non-humanly weird. Like, she's not even like, oh, weird, like awkward woman that like doesn't know how to like handle being around kids or like being around groups of women. Like, she takes it a step further, or the writers take it a step further to make her this like you guys are saying, like a sociopath or a psychopath. And the first thing that I wrote down, where I was like, this character's like a weirdo. She's like weird in like it almost like an annoying way, because the first, like the opening sequence with her and Adam Scott, they're like rushing to the hospital. They have this patient in the back, like Ben Parker's like starting CPR, and then they like rush to the hospital, and then a nurse comes out to greet them in the hallway and is like, she's gonna be okay. And then Dakota Johnson looks at her and goes, who? Like, who are you even talking about? Like, why are you talking to me? Like I'm not just an EMT that brought a patient to a hospital. I'm like, what kind of fucking EMT are you to be like, who? And,
yeah, they probably ask her that every time they do that. They're probably like, yeah, your patient's going to be okay. She'll be like, okay, like this isn't routine? Like, is this your first day? Like,
right. And then the nurse is like, oh, the patient you just brought in? And she's like, oh, cool. Like, didn't care to ask about this at all. Like, don't know why you're talking to me. And then obviously she has that awkward moment with the kid, like trying to give her like the picture and everything. And it's just like, it's just written so weirdly and portrayed so weirdly that I at the end of the day, I think I blame both of them for kind of how like awkward and off-putting she is throughout the duration of this. Even when she meets the girls and she's driving them in the back of the cab, like she's so aggressively mean to them. She's like, shut up, like everyone stop talking, like I need to think. And I'm like, okay, if you don't give a shit about these girls, like let the spider guy have them then. Like, because you clearly like you hate the fact that you're doing this. Like she's just like so annoyed to be around these girls the entire time she's around them. And they have this whole conversation about how she's like, you know what, like I'm just gonna drop you off at your parents' houses and like let them deal with it and they'll be fine. And all the girls are sitting back there like, oh, we kind of don't have really stable homes. Like you're kind of our best bet when it comes to parental guidance right now, which is crazy. And then they have to have that same conversation again later on in the movie.
Well, because she keeps leaving them.
Right, because she keeps leaving them, and she keeps promising. She's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm gonna figure out what's going on. I'm gonna figure out my visions. I'm gonna figure out why this guy is after you." And then she comes back, and she's like, "I got nothing. I got nothing. I'm taking you back to your parents. Not my problem. Sorry, guys. Go to the police."
I almost feel like the constant leaving them is just like, we have this really cool idea of like, what if we stage this like fight in a diner and like let's get this cool like Britney Spears. We have this song, we got this song, like let's have a cool scene where like they're dancing and Madam Web has to save them, and then they're like, let's have this like really cool scene where they all like learn how to do CPR together, even though they have clearly bonded by then. It's not them who needs the bonding, it's she who needs the bonding with them. Or like, let's have this really cool scene where we can like have Peter Parker get born, and like the only way to do that, let's put the girls with Uncle Ben. So like I almost feel like them sending her off makes no sense, because like in order to care about this woman and her relationship with the kids, we want to see the four of them bond. We don't want to see the three of them bond. They bond very quickly because they all hate her. They bond together and find a commonality very quickly. I want to see her bond with them, but I feel like the movie keeps wanting to hit these beats that they're like, well, it doesn't make sense for Madam Web to be aligned with that storyline, so let's have the girls do that and let's have Madam Web do this. But then it's always like, but the whole thing is that they're teaming up at the end together. It's like, you can't have a team up movie if everyone's doing their own separate thing the whole time. It's like you have to establish the fellowship before they go on their separate journeys, before they come back together in Return of the King. You can't just like start it where they're separate and be like, no, we know them, we know those guys. It's like, no, you got to set the foundation first. And it feels like they just keep splitting up and come back, splitting up and come back. It's like an abusive relationship.
Here's the thing. Here's the main thing that does not work with all that. All that doesn't work. You guys are absolutely right. But she gets them. She doesn't want them. She is constantly yelling at them. They bond over how much they hate her. When she's with them, it's not just like, guys, I need to think. It's your voices are drilling into my brain. It's like she's saying stuff like that to them. She's telling them, don't do stupid things, and then driving away. And then she leaves again. She comes back, and then they have not exactly what you were saying. They don't have all four of them bonding together. And then when we get to the end, and she's like, "No, they belong with me. They belong to me now."
It makes no sense.
Like it's like,
because you saved her life.
I don't think we earned that at all.
Right.
Like that is so weird. That her delivery of it, the fact that it happened, everything about that point in the movie is so fucking creepy. Like the way she's like, "They're mine." Like, are you guys immediately family? It's like, yes, we are. They are mine now.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Me.
Like, my precious. Yeah. And you know, that last scene has a few tinges of like what we see in Venom a little bit, where it's like, she's like, "Bless you." And then she's like, "What do you mean? Achoo." She's like, "How'd you know that was going to happen?" Like, that kind of stuff is funny. And I almost think like if the whole movie were a little bit more about the hijinks of it, like almost play into the humor of it, because they always play it as like this deep, dark thing where she's like, "I saw a vision. I have to stop it. Oh no. Like, it's always so intense that at the end she's like, "You're gonna sneeze. Bless you." "Oh, you're welcome." "Oh, nice shirt." "Oh, I knew that." Like, it's almost like now it's like fun and like silly, and it's like, where was this whole attitude the whole time? Now you're just like having fun, and like, is it that you had to like lose your sight to then just like be okay with it all? Like, I almost feel like this is the similar criticism that people have with Venom, where the first movie was a little too serious, and then finally in the second movie they were like, "No, this is supposed to be camp." And then they leaned into that. I think here they realized it in the last 2 minutes, where they're like, "Oh, this could be kind of funny." It's almost like a New Girl sitcom. Everyone's in the apartment and like, "Oh, you're gonna sneeze. Haha, I got you." And it's like, silly Madam Web. Like, I want to see that the whole time now. And maybe that would open up a good sequel, but like, it's not gonna happen because Matt said, they didn't make money. So it's like, they fumbled the ball so hard on that too. Like, this could have been camp. This could have been funny.
I agree with you. I agree with you about how that last scene should have been more of what the movie was. I can tell you absolutely with certainty, if I was one of those girls and she did that "bless you" thing right before I sneezed, it's a good thing she's blind, because she would be able to feel how hard my eyes rolled and every time she fucking did that, because god damn it, that's annoying. But there's so they don't earn any of that, which is fine. They're trying to build to this thing. But it's not just that part of it. There's a lot of because I was talking about the physics of it, how the physics aren't this movie aren't really working. A single firework knocks down a brick wall, and if that's true, if that's happening, why are we letting just normal people have those? They shouldn't be able to have those. If we can knock down brick walls with a single firework, that whole firework scene was just bonkers. That shit crazy.
And it's what Kelsey was saying too, the editing too. It's like they're like, okay, we have this, let's add layers and layers of cuts and like noises to everything, to where it's like it's just sensory overload. And I guess the whole point is like, you are Madam Web now. The web connects you too. And like, Madam Web has these overly sensory experiences. I'm like, yeah, I want to live in the world of the film. I don't want to have a POV first-hand view of everything. Like, it's almost a little too, sensory overload for me. I don't know. Maybe it works better for others, but I was just, every single time I went, I was like, oh my gosh, another firework. And it's like, aren't they trying to be discreet at first? Like, aren't they like, it's almost like they're like kind of sneaking around that little warehouse, but like, you're setting off fireworks. You're making the noisiest thing possible. Yeah, that whole last fight is just something.
I mean, I have a myriad of issues with that final action sequence, but I just wanted to touch on kind of going back to her character a little bit. Like, there were just other things that were not happening during the movie that I feel like typically happen in superhero movies, like her having that moment of like wanting to take responsibility for the girls finally and owning up to like being like, okay, you know what, actually, I think I may truly be their only hope. Like, I should actually start being a role model for them. And we don't really see that happen, because I guess it's building up to, you know, she goes back to them. They kind of have their whole like bonding moment over the fact where she opens up about like being in foster care, and they kind of talk about that a little bit. And then she reveals that like, okay, but I do have to leave you again. I have to go to Peru to find more answers. And so she goes to Peru, and she like, you know, meets this guy who essentially is like trying to like teach her more about her powers and kind of how to like control them and how to like unlock, like he just keeps saying like over and over again, like your mind has so much potential, like you can be in multiple places at once. And I feel like, you know, we've seen a lot of superhero movies. Dyl, would you say? I feel like there's a formula where at that point in the film you kind of get a training montage where the hero like goes through trial and errors of or eras. Is it eras or errors?
Errors.
Trial and errors. Okay,
Errors.
I said it right. Sorry. I like say error and error wrong because of my Jersey accent. Okay,
yeah, trial and error.
errors.
You try things and you sometimes don't succeed. There's an error with it, but like sometimes you do succeed.
Yeah.
So you try some, you get some wrong, you know.
But we don't see any of that. Like instead we get this one long montage of her like discovering why her mom was there from the beginning, and then we find out that it's because, you know, her as a baby in the womb was going to be born with this muscular something or other. What's the word I'm looking for? Disability.
Disability.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some kind of like muscular disability. And so her mom went to the jungle to like find this spider that was going to like hopefully be the cure for this ailment that she was going to be born with. And also, way back to the beginning of the film, the mom's whole mission is finding the spider. And when she finally does, we don't see that as the audience. She just walks into camp one day and is like, I got it. I finally found the spider. And then and I'm like, wait, that's what we were trying to do in the beginning. Like, why didn't we see that? Why weren't we there? And then, you know, he starts killing the people, and like, so there's just like these moments that are like completely glossed over, like missed. I don't know if they were never written, never shot. I don't know what happened, but it feels like they were like full like deletions of the film that like we should have seen as the audience. So that moments where she says, ah, yes, they're all mine, I love them now, feel earned. Like you were saying, Matt.
Yeah, nothing feels earned. If anything, Ben's relationship with the girls feels more earned because they help him. Because admittedly, that's also a big thing. Like literally he's not even her brother. He's her husband's brother. So it's like he's got to help this sister-in-law deliver a baby while also taking care of these two kids. Ben goes through a lot in this film. And I honestly think there's a bond there to be had with them where I almost wish there was a world where she could be like, they could live with Ben, but like, obviously Ben is just there merely for the IP of it all. Even though I feel like he has more of a bond with those girls than Madame Web does, you know? Yeah. So yeah, it's tough. They really don't develop that relationship at all. And I do think the makings are there for something good. And we haven't talked about what actually works for this film, but like, I do think genuinely like that whole idea of like these girls are under attack by this guy who knows that they're going to kill him in the future. She can see the future to protect them is a really good inciting incident. It's a great idea. Obviously, like it's a really good idea. You're using your superhero to save these girls who are going to be killed for killing the other guy. Like that's a great central motive, central idea. It's just they take all the wrong directions in getting to the finale of it, you know?
It's the thing that she was going to have was a neuromuscular disease, which is the thing that Madame Web has in the comic. She's not cured of it. She has it. She's actually she's called Madame Web because not only because her name is Web, but the life support system that she uses to keep her alive is a web-like structure. So she can't move around. Like she has this disease and she just sits there all blind and knowing the future and stuff. And she's also very, very old in the comics. This character that they created for her is very, very different than the comic version. But yeah, I agree. I agree that with that like Ben has a better, like has more of a, they don't seem to understand what's important to us in the story. Like what is the important thing for us to see happen in the story, which I think is one of the big things with this is that like, yeah, finding out where she found the spider would have been more interesting than some of the other stuff we saw. Having the relationship with Cassie and the girls build instead of just be awkward. Like, they spent too much time, I think, trying to make us laugh with the awkwardness of their relationship, which they didn't do very well. They spent too much time with that and not enough time actually creating. And probably because they thought, oh, we're gonna have 3 movies to do that, like, or whatever. Which they don't. That's the problem. You never want to bank on that. You want to make a good one first.
You can't.
So I think that's I don't know. They just they did not seem to understand what we would want to see in the movie and what would be important to us in telling the story. And I think that's really a big issue with this film.
Yeah. Did you have any other physics things, Matt, before we dive into the big ending that Kelsey was teasing, the notes and notes?
Here's one. Why is she blind? Why she go blind? I don't understand why she's blind.
Because the comics say so, I guess. Like, that's
but she's blind. She's not blind because she was. I don't understand. She was in the water before. She's been in the water. She's been resuscitated before. Suddenly she's blind. I don't understand why she's blind. And that nobody seems to care about that. Like,
Kelsey, do you have an answer?
Well, I think when she's in the water, one of the fireworks like blasts into her face.
Oh, is that what it is?
Did that happen?
So, like, the giant S that she keeps seeing in her vision from the Pepsi Cola sign falls into the water. We see that, and then shooting right immediately after it is a firework that literally like shoots right in her face.
See,
and I think that's what blinds her. Whether or not that can actually blind someone if they're in the water, I don't know. But that's the story that they're going with in this.
And that's the problem with making the entire movie a bunch of cuts and cuts and cuts and large flashes and lights and stuff. It's like, then when something is very deliberately done that we need to see, we don't know what's necessarily going on because we don't know if this is a flash forward, flash back. We don't know what's cutting. It's just this large light. Like, I guess if you watch it many, many, many times, you could pick up on that. But it's also like that's one thing that you would want to make very, very clear. You know, like have it like do a close up on her eyes after that big blast. You know, like that's a time where you can take the moment. You know, but they just brush past everything. That's everything in this movie.
Certainly the first time I watched this movie in theaters and she all of a sudden was wearing glasses in the or not glasses yet, but the bandages in the hospital bed. I literally said, I was like, oh, she's blind now? Like I was also confused the first time. It was on the second rewatch that I saw the firework kind of hit her face. But
I guess that could make sense. I just didn't I guess I didn't notice that, or I think it's a lot of what Dylan was saying, that like you don't know what's significant when they aren't really focusing on the significant things. Is really the thing.
Yeah. You just put a bunch of filters on top of a screen. It's like, what am I looking at? Yeah.
Speaking of that, you were talking about the Pepsi Cola sign. I work for a soda bottling company. I don't want to say which one, but I will say this: they definitely had a deal, a partnership with Pepsi Cola, and man, is there never been a better marketing deal for Coke than Pepsi Cola being in this movie. Oh man,
this movie advertises. This movie hypes up 2 different types of Cokes. If you know what I mean?
Yeah. Speaking of, and this is just real quick before we get to the notes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this movie's set in 2003. Which is the year I remember very well. I was a 19-year-old man in 1993.
Same.
Here is same. You were a 19-year-old man as well. Here is the
good days.
There's a lot of things that is interesting that they focused on, the fact that not very many people had cell phones, that's a pretty big thing. Like they only had like one cell phone in the movie and they threw it out the window or whatever. They also Toxic, when they were playing the Britney Spears song and they were like, this one's gonna be big, which this was her that was like her comeback song. Like she'd already been famous and then was now gonna have another hit, and that was what Toxic was. So they were focusing on that. But one thing that they could have easily commented on. There's a movie that came out in 2003 called Final Destination 2, and the big kill thing at the beginning that they are able to, or the thing that they escape at the beginning that death follows them throughout the rest of the movie is a truck with logs on it that falls off and kills everybody on the road. She drives behind a truck with logs on it, and no one comments on it. No one says anything. This is 2003. Since 2003, every one of us around my age has been afraid to drive behind a truck full of logs. The fact that in 2003 she did not go, nope, not following this, or something, is something that they definitely missed out on. As soon as I saw that, I was like, they're gonna do it. They're gonna comment on it, and they didn't. And it
maybe
upset
she
me.
doesn't watch movies because she just knows the ending when it starts. You know, maybe she's like, the kid sees dead people. I don't need to sit through this. You know.
Although we do know she does watch movies because she was definitely watching a Christmas movie at a time frame that was definitely not Christmas. She was watching Christmas Carol.
You're actually so right.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. Kelsey, I want to hear these notes on the ending, because you said you took a lot of notes on the ending. I would love your thoughts on this whole ending sequence and all.
I do really want to get to the ending. I do just want to make one last comment about the fact that there are 3 characters in the movie that are utilized throughout the movie that are kind of given to us with little to no context at all. And even upon watching this movie a second time around, I'm still not 100% sure who these people were to the other characters in the movie. And the first one is with the lady that the villain picks up at the opera and then sleeps with, and then takes her security number and then uses that to hack into the cyber security whatever, so he can like watch the whole town. I was so confused. I was like, what? That scene is utilized to get, first of all, there's so much bad ADR in that whole bedroom sequence that he has with her.
Oh, yeah.
But he gives us so much exposition to this random fucking lady. And I'm like, I don't know why I care about her. I don't know who she is. I think you're just having a one-night stand. I don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden he steals something from her, whatever. And then, his personal assistant, his guy in the chair who's monitoring all the screens, Shoshana from Girls, also gets introduced to us with out any context. They didn't even do it in a lazy way. That was like, oh, Shoshana, you've been my personal assistant, my most trusted assistant for 10 years. I know I can trust you with this job. They didn't even do it in a lazy way like that, in a one line. So I was also like, what's this relationship? How do they know each other? What's going on here? And then lastly, the big first death in the film is with, I'm assuming, their kind of supervisor, their chief of the EMTs, who we only really get in one scene, and it's at the baby shower while he's grilling. And there doesn't really seem to be that sturdy of a relationship between him and Dakota Johnson's character. I felt like maybe if she had seen this guy as a father figure and they had a moment, that would have made him more important. Because then all of a sudden he dies in the next scene, and I don't care. I'm like, I was literally like, this guy died, and for what? I really don't. I don't care.
And then the one character that's death actually
meet. So we did meet his wife though in the scene before that. So that does give him a little bit more gravity.
Yeah, and then
I agree. We don't know.
And then the one character that she does have this emotional connection to that died is one that she doesn't even meet. It's the one that dies before she's even born. It's her mother. So it's very interesting. It's that's a character that actually has a tie to her, and they never meet.
And then back to the 2003 thing, I think my biggest complaint is that, like, for some reason, like, I get it. I was 5 in 2003. I'm so sorry, Matt. But so I don't know much about 2003, but this movie didn't read like 2003 to me. I wish that it had just gone, I wish it just like leaned more into being a period piece than it did. Because it was like too modern and too like,
and the big
it could have
I
taken
can
place
tell
in
you
2024.
I can tell you why that happened. Because remember when Dylan, you remember when they went and did a bunch of reshoots on this and we were all like, that's because they're going to put Andrew Garfield in it. Yeah. The reason is because they did a bunch of reshoots because they were going to set it in the 90s so that the one being born could be Andrew Garfield. So, it could be Andrew Garfield's thing. And then they were like, no, we're going to do 2003. So they redid it as
Tom
2003. Holland. So it could be Tom Holland. Basically, they kept most of it as vague as possible with certain references being in there. So they made it so they didn't actually set the world. They didn't build the world as something that was any specific time frame. They just had like small references in there that made it like that. But the reason for that is because they wanted to be able to decide which Spider-Man they wanted it to be.
Right.
Is
that makes sense. And then of course the one set piece that like has this big action sequence early on is a diner, which is already modeled after a retro 50s vibe. So like that totally doesn't work at all either, you know. Not to say that
why did it take her
vibe, I don't know.
Why did it take her longer to get there when she was in a car than it did when she was on foot going through the All right, so the first time she gets there well before the bad guy gets there. And it's like, come on, let's do this. And then they're already all inside. When she gets in the car, when she's like, all right, I'm going to do this again. And then she gets in the car and goes to the diner. She gets there well after him because she drives through the diner and hits him with the car. I don't understand why it took her longer in the car to get there than it did walking half a mile through the forest.
Logic.
Weird. That's the physics. The
physics.
And Sony is trying to pull a fast one on us because there is a guy on the train. By the way, why are they all on that freaking train in Grand Central Station? Why? Why was she going to Poughkeepsie? She bought a ticket for Poughkeepsie. Why she go to Poughkeepsie? Was someone in Poughkeepsie? Did she need to find something out in Poughkeepsie? Like, what? Oh, it was
just big FDR. Pronounce it in German. Is that German? In Jersey. Is that how you guys pronounce Poughkeepsie? She's saying Poughkeepsie. Poughkeepsie.
Poughkeepsie.
It's
I just listen. I'm just a simple Oklahoma boy. I'm not sure how you people pronounce it up there in the Northeast. So.
I pronounce it Poughkeepsie Cola. Getting some product placement in there. No, that was a
Cola.
What was?
It's good.
I would like to just give a question to the audience. I'm going to take a poll real quick. What was worse for Pepsi's brand, the commercial with Kendall Jenner or this movie?
I'd still say Kendall Jenner.
Let you decide.
Because it aired more. Like, people could actively ignore this if they wanted to. They couldn't ignore it.
Right. That's true.
Like, so I don't know.
But anyway,
it's still a memorable set piece regardless, though. Like, as much as it makes, it's like, Pepsi, like, it's at least a memorable enough set piece. Like, that's the thing. There are good ideas here. It's just like, it's the execution that isn't good here. Like, I think there's a lot of interesting ideas, as I said, the exciting premise, the actual final set piece being these like big letters falling off a sign. Like, it's kind of an interesting idea. It never fully comes together, so I think it's all a matter of execution, if anything.
I don't know what you're talking about. Kendall Jenner solved police overreach with that commercial, so I don't know what you're talking about there, but
when you're right, Matt. Like,
she is the MVP.
But anyway, they're so lazily just like thrown together on this random train just to get all the characters together for like no reason. Like, why are they all on this train to Poughkeepsie? I don't know. But there is a guy sitting on that train playing a PlayStation portable PlayStation, a PSP in the year 2003. I fucking think not, Sony, because the PSP didn't come out until 2005. So
That's correct.
Oh.
I thought that too, but I wasn't sure. I got that confused with the Game Boy. I didn't want to say it, but
Sony, you have 24 hours to respond.
again, just self-indulgent product placement. We love it.
Okay, so now we can get into the last sequence.
Definitely not in the 90s.
I definitely not. Certainly not. I did write down this bitch loves to drive a car through something she's not supposed to.
Mhm.
First the diner, then the ambulance through the parking garage, the concrete wall.
That motherfucker jumps to get hit by that ambulance. Look, go look at the gif of it. He jumps from the ground into the ambulance that's in the air.
I'm gonna say she lives dangerously. You know, I don't know. She would love the Bear season 2. That's all I'll say.
So, my main problem with this action sequence at the end is because there's not much really any superheroing going on. It's kind of just Dakota Johnson yelling at these three girls like, oh, go left, go right, stop, no, don't go there, duck. And they're not even fighting the bad guy. They're battling with the fireworks that they set off in the factory to screw him over. Now it backfired. And they're like, oh my God, I am my worst enemy. Like, so now they're just fighting all these fucking fireworks until he shows up. And then he shows up, he's wiping out every single one of them. They all try to come for him. And then he just picks them off one by one. Now they're all dangling from things. They're like, oh, Sydney Sweeney's like this. Oh, I'm dangling. And then she like unlocks her power, is able to like do that thing where she like puts herself in like 3 different places, which just looks terrible. Like the effects are not good. I'm so sorry.
No one has ever done that effect better than Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, where it's like Voldemort's voice is like in Harry's head. You don't see Voldemort, but you just hear it, and it's like the way it's audio layered. It's almost like it's like this extra ambient echoing voice. That's all they have to do for that. Like have her voice in their heads and like go, you got this. I'll take care of you. Like they don't need to actually have her as a ghost there, because then it looks like, you know, like Scooby-Doo 2002. You know, like it doesn't look. Yeah, like when they're all like when they got like the little ghost fat heads and they're all switching bodies, which I love. It's a great effect then, but now it just doesn't look good. I agree. Like I wish they just did the like whole like, you know, voice in your head thing, because it works so well in Harry Potter. You can just do that over and over again, because then you don't have to worry about any visuals. It's just the sound. Like we clearly know they've recorded a lot of sound in post. They could easily do that.
And also, he waited entirely too long to just fucking take out the real her. Like, he waited for her 3 spawns to save the 3 girls, and then he decided to, like, donkey kick her into the side of the sign. And I was like, you could have done that, like, right away. Like, she was very vulnerable in that moment. And I think, on top of the fact that it's mostly them fighting with the fireworks, and then these 3 girls, like, they've learned nothing this whole movie. They're so useless this entire fight sequence. And I get it. It's because they don't have powers yet. Like they're not superhuman yet. But still, like Sydney Sweeney's character makes a comment in the beginning when they're first in the woods where she's like, I know Taekwondo. Why didn't that come up again? Why wasn't there a training sequence of her teaching them Taekwondo? Then her character would have been at least a little bit more interesting instead of being this dull, lifeless cardboard cutout of a character.
Or at least have her one time overtake the bad guy. Like the bad guy shows up and he's caught off guard by the fact that she can do something to him.
Yeah.
You never have to do anything with it again. She doesn't have to like win with that, but to surprise him with it, like that would be a payoff. That's the movie's problem, is no payoff ever. We just don't get the payoff ever.
And like you could have added a training montage instead of like dancing to Toxic in a diner, or like sitting around learning how to do CPR in a hotel room. The CPR thing they pay off later, like that's the one thing they pay off, but like you could have like a training montage. Like this movie's short, you could add another 20 minutes, like have it, you know, have them go with her to Peru, and then through that they find like some spiders or something that help them, and they're like, wow, like we have these.
That's
these
the
powers.
other thing, is that you're trying to set up a universe here and you're trying to get them like they're going to have powers. Like, so I expected at some point for them to like go to this dude's house and then them get bit by spiders he had in his house or something like that. And they never did. If they had gone to Peru, then they could have maybe gotten their powers on that at that time.
Maybe it's
yeah.
Yeah, maybe
but now
they didn't get to go there.
It's no matter if they continued this, no matter how they got their powers, it would be less believable because they are not in that situation where they could all like they're all randomly getting bit by a spider someday, maybe, or whatever. Like if they were in a situation where there were spiders and they could all get bit by one, yeah, that makes sense. It's always going to be less believable from here on. So I don't understand why they didn't pay off that at all.
Like one of the times that Dakota Johnson left them, they could have all turned to each other and been like, okay, well, if this bitch is going to keep leaving us, throwing us under the bus, leaving us in the dust, we should get our shit together and, you know, be kind of useful and, you know, learn how to like defend ourselves just in case this guy comes after us. And Sydney Sweeney could have been like, I know Taekwondo. Line up, ladies. We're learning how to kick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but a cheeseburger and milkshake sounds so good at that diner, Kels. That's why.
Fuck.
The diner thing just cracks me up because it's like also like I've never been in a diner where they've just been like playing toxic and people just start dancing on tables. Like this is not the vibe. Like it's not like they stumbled into like this bar, which is like they're young, so I guess that's why they wouldn't. But like, you know.
And also, I just want to say, like, he wasn't doing anything special during his fight sequences either. Like, he really wasn't doing anything that special. Like, I feel like it was the editing that was doing all the work for him. Like, they would film him, like, upside down, and he would be, like, crawling on the wall. But it's like, we've seen that. You've seen one Spider-Man crawl on the wall. You've seen them all crawl on the wall. So,
they really milked
what's this guy's shtick?
You know,
know what
the
I
subway,
mean?
too. Like, they milk the crawling. Because I feel like he's a one-trick pony.
There was one thing that he did that I thought was really impressive. And it was the editing. But the fact that it was the part where he grabs her and then like drops her and suddenly you realize they're upside down now. That was really cool. Like, because he was on the ceiling, but they don't show him getting on the ceiling. They just show they're there. He grabs her and then suddenly she's falling the other direction because they're on the ceiling. Like that was kind of cool. But yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Here's my thing about the ending. I want to talk about the ending sequence. And I know that this was all for our benefit, the audience, but it didn't make logical sense to me, which was that she's crawling backwards and she keeps looking up at this one specific letter, being like, and he's not paying attention to that at all. He's just walking toward her. If I was going toward a girl who I intended to do harm to, which would never be the case, but if this were me and I'm doing that, and she keeps looking up at one specific thing just outside, just off of where I am, I would definitely want to know what she's looking at and why she's looking at it and beware of the thing that's probably about to take me out. At no point does he do that. She's way too obvious with her looking up at that letter, waiting for it to fall. That part, both times I watched it, I was like, why does she keep looking up at it? Like, I know that she's waiting for it to happen, but she knows she's seen it.
And as we've learned at the end, she doesn't need to look at anything to know what's happening.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you have more notes about the ending?
Sorry, I needed to take that breath. I was like, it all frustrates me.
Yeah, and then obviously we have this awkward hospital scene where the nurse comes in to do nothing else except ask, "Are you all immediate family?" Which is like, it doesn't even look like she's in the ICU or anything crazy. So I don't even know in what context, like, you can only have immediate family members if it's visiting hours in the hospital. Don't quote me on that. But she goes, "Yes, they're all mine." And then the nurse just
which was way creepy.
Yeah, yes, they're all mine. And then the nurse just like leaves. Like she had nothing else to do. They didn't even like write her to like check the vitals or just like make one little note or like, you know, something like, you know, stupid for her to do in the background. She just immediately turned around and left. And I was like, that was fucking weird. And then we cut to her in seemingly a brand new luxury apartment in New York City. So I said, did she get a raise somehow? Well, she's blind and also paralyzed, so she's not doing the EMT thing anymore. Or so I guess I'm just assuming that she got a big fat check from the city from getting crushed by the Pepsi Cola sign.
I was about to say she got the payout from Pepsi Cola.
She got that Kendall Jenner money.
Yeah.
One thing about just real quick about the hospital room scene. When she's asking about baby Peter Parker, whose name we don't get to know.
Right.
When she's asking about him, and they were like, yeah, Ben is he's not sure if he's cut out for this uncling thing or whatever she says to it. And then Cassie says, oh, he wait, or he'll you know, whatever she says, the shitty little thing she says, that is and with a smirk, that is, she is either smirking at the fact that his brother and his brother's wife dies and he takes over, or smirking at the fact that he is going to die in his nephew's arms when he becomes Spider-Man, or both. Whatever she is smiling at, it's shitty.
yeah, for sure. Wow, I didn't even catch. Like,
I didn't think of that. Yeah, it's a very
point.
sad. It's a very sad story. Like we don't see Richard Parker at all. Like that's pretty sad. I mean, we see him in Life of Pi as a tiger, but like we don't see like his dad, Richard Parker.
Well, the guy who plays the adult version of Pi, who's telling the story, is the same guy who plays Richard Parker in the Amazing Spider-Man.
Yes.
So, which I think is so awesome, because I saw those like real close to each other, and I was like, he's playing Richard Parker, and he was with Richard Parker.
For those who don't know, Richard Parker is the name of the tiger in Life of Pi. So, and I just needed to shout out my boy, Best Supporting Actor of 2013. But yeah, I do think, it's a mess. The whole ending's a mess. But now we also have to talk about what also just makes it good. Like what do we enjoy? Like we are all acknowledging what's bad about it, but like there's still that enjoyment factor. And I think that's what's important to note, to kind of like bring this full circle to like the frame wreck of it all, because this is so bad it's good. So like what makes this enjoyable? Is it just the baffling choices? Is it like, what, Matt, for you, like what do you enjoy this one, or is this like kind of just like a so bad it's bad?
I think it's well, we're going to get to the ratings here in a moment,
right,
but I will say this. I will say that this is not the last time I will be watching this movie. I think that it is. I'm not excited to get back to it after watching it twice in a row. I'm not chomping at the bit, but it's definitely a movie I'm going to watch again, because there's just so much of it that just made me happy at how awful it was. So it does get the frame wreck seal of approval for me.
Yeah. Kels, do you look at it as like a so bad it's good movie still, or are you just still like, this sucks? I'm not, you know.
It's I do think it's a so bad it's good. I don't think it's like, because there are movies that are just like, you know, bad and like boring, like, you know, we were saying with like Morbius. Like, I'm not going back to that movie anytime soon unless I have to like study it for trivia or something. Like I would throw this on just if I'm like ever with a group of people and like, guys, you gotta see this shit. Like, it's like I said in the beginning, it's more of a fascination for me, and it's like not being able to look away from a car wreck.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, the same thing. Like, I'm just so fascinated by it all. And I think it also helps that I do genuinely think the actual characterization of the three girls, even though Sydney Sweeney's miscast, they are at least intriguing enough, and they are kind of that backbone where like the Peter Parker stuff, it all feels very pigeonholed, but I also really like Ben as a character and his whole thing, to where like, no matter how terrible Madam Web and like the villain are, like the main central hero and central villain, the supporting characters are likable enough and just well like performed and understood enough for the most part that I can at least get intrigued by them and by the inciting premise, because it is a cool idea. You see the future to prevent things that will happen, to save people who are being attacked. Like that whole inciting incident, as I said, is very engaging to me. It's just like all the different things they did to get there are, like you said, it's like that fascination, which is just so polarizing. That doesn't even come with Morbius. Morbius is just bad. Like I don't like Morbius. It's like there's one scene where I'm like, that's funny when Matt Smith is dancing to that song where it's like, have sex. It's like, all right, that scene's funny, but like everything else, I'm just like, okay, you know. But this one, I'm just like, I'm perplexed by it all. I'm entertained, and it's not because it's good. Like I'm not like, wow, this is awesome. I'm like, wow, this is awesome, but like terrible, you know. Like I really enjoyed it, you know. And I think that can't be said about a lot of Marvel movies. It feels like it's either great, you enjoy it, or it's like not good, don't bother, you know.
It feels like feels like a feature-length meme is what this movie feels like. Like I just enjoy, and it, or like a movie made out of memes, because it feels like you don't have to go far to go to another thing that's going to make you at least happy inside. Every time she says, "Let's try this again," it makes me happy inside, because I know that that's kind of ridiculous that she's saying that to the car. And but and then that when she does it, it takes her longer to do it than it took her the first time on foot.
You didn't hear the car answer back. He whispered. He go, "Ka-chow." You didn't hear that? She said, "Let's try this again." He said, "Ka-chow."
The car said, "Wow, wow." I think if handled with different writers, I think that the only way to make this like a genuinely good superhero film is that you have to surround Madam Web with people who already have superpowers, because I don't think that the superpower of being able to predict the future is entertaining enough to carry an entire superhero movie on its own. I think that's, you know, why I was about to say something dumb. I'm going to brush over that. Never mind. I didn't say anything at all.
Well, that's why in the comics she's part of the Spider family and is not her own Spider character. Like she didn't have her own line of books. She is part of the Spider-Man family.
Right.
Yes.
So so I just think that like you said earlier, Matt, like the girl should have gotten like bitten by spiders at some point during this movie so that we could have seen them with powers. And I think that would have solved the entire problem of like this last fight sequence, in the most liberal sense of the word, fight sequence, so chaotic and baffling. I think it would have solved all that.
Yeah.
But maybe in another timeline, there's a Madam Web that is Chef's Kiss nominated for Best Picture. Who knows?
But do we need it? Do we want it? I'm content with this. I'm content. I'm content. What are you gonna say, Matt?
All right. No, I was just gonna. No, I agree. I don't know that we need that. I don't know that we want a good version, because we have the best possible version of this movie, which is a bad one. Do we want to get into the superlatives real quick, or do you have anything else?
I think it'll segue to the final talking point that I wanted to bring up, so we can get to superlatives. I think.
All right.
Kelsey, anything else that you need to touch on? All right, cool.
All right. Well, let's start with our worst line of dialogue, because the dialogue throughout was very, very bad. But I want to know which one you guys thought was the worst, or at least that made you the most entertained by its badness, if not the worst.
Yeah, Kelsey.
It's right at the beginning of the movie when Adam Scott and Cassie Webb are both eating their Chinese food. We're getting a sense of who they are as people with one another. And she's seemingly okay. This is also so what I'm guessing, because I didn't fully understand this scene even a second time, but I think this is what I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she opens the invitation to the baby shower, gets annoyed, and then says verbatim, and I quote, "Ugh, we both hate family stuff," which I hated. Because it feels too on the nose. And also, what human being says that out loud in any context? Oh, I hate doing family stuff.
The person who wrote the people who wrote these first two scenes, the one where they're in the ambulance and then after when they're having their Chinese food, that whole section, the dialogue is just so bad it does not feel like it was written by human people, or at least human people who understand. Like it was written by maybe two people who weren't writing the other side of the conversation. Like they were only writing one half and they didn't really know what the other half of the conversation was saying. Because also, like, all throughout there is bad.
Also, but like, yes, isn't it his sister-in-law's thing? So like that would be like if Kelsey had an occasion and like I opened up the invite with Matt and Matt said to me like, "Ugh, I hate family shit." And I'm like, "That's my sister. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's important."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, right. That's kind of where it's at. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, if it was to a different coworker, like, "Ugh, Ben's sister-in-law has this thing," like whatever. But like, you're saying it to Ben, who's clearly has some sort of attachment enough to like stay with her when she's going into labor voluntarily. A lot of brother-in-laws probably wouldn't do that, you know, but you know, he clearly cares enough to do that. So it's, I don't know. It was weird. Yeah, that's a good line.
And I also think in that moment they were trying to make her seem so much not like other girls. Like, oh, no, I don't want to hang out with a bunch of girls at a baby shower and do all this annoying feminine shit. And then, because even Adam Scott follows up with, oh, no, you'll be in the back with us grilling. Don't worry. And I'm just like, ugh, are we like beyond writing this, like, not like other girls, like, character?
But Kelsey, it's 2003.
That's true.
Okay, all right, you got me there.
No, it's fine. Next baby shower, y'all will grill. I'll sit and play games at guessing children and making everyone super bummed. My line of dialogue comes from the trip to Peru. Not Paddington's, the Madam Web's. And the line I have, it's the Yoda thing of like, do or do not, there is no try. It's like you can't say a linear sentence. This guy tells her, quote, "And when you take on the responsibility, great power will come," which is basically saying with great power comes great responsibility. But either because of a rights issue, they can't say it, or they're just trying to be funny and like, let's rearrange this title, or it's totally oblivious and it's just a pure coincidence. Either way, when I saw that, I let out the biggest groan, and the second biggest groan was the first time I saw it in the theaters. So yeah.
Okay, so that is the okay. So that. Here's the thing about that. It sucks. It sucks hard. And here's the thing, because they are trying to capitalize on with great power comes great responsibility. There's not a rights issue. They own that. It's Sony. They are allowed to use it. The problem is, and you didn't mention the actual reason that they did that. The actual reason is because what he is saying, and he's not saying with great power comes great responsibility, just saying it unliterally. He's saying that if you take on the responsibility, you will get the power. So that's why it makes sense. Yeah. That's why in the thing she takes on, it's that moment she takes on the responsibility. In a way, this means she wasn't really taking on the responsibility for those girls until right before she falls into the water, and right before she decides that they belong to her.
Good point.
But it's a bad line. It's so bad. It reeks of just trying to capitalize on that line everybody knows. Say what you will about the MCU version of Spider-Man or the MCU at all. It took them 3 movies to break that one out. They knew that we were waiting for it. And it took them 3 movies, and they did a comic accurate version of it. And it was awesome. They did not this was just like the rest of the movie. Just cashing in on things that they knew that getting that Pepsi Cola money, that was basically all this was. Yes, that was mine also. Kelsey, did you have comments on that line?
I mean, also, this was another character in general that I feel like we got no backstory. Like, there really was no clear connection. Like, all he really was the guy that like delivered her, and they didn't really make a like a moment out of that. So whenever this guy talked, I was just rolling my eyes anyway, because it was like another character where I was like, who does this person mean to me? Why do I care about him?
Yeah. A couple other lines, just real quick. I wanna pull out here that were particularly egregious. I mentioned one earlier, and this was my least favorite, or this was my line until I decided to talk about it and then change it elsewhere. But when your heart starts back up again, you're fine. That's the line.
Yeah.
How would you know that you could climb a wall if you've never tried? Which is true. That's a true thing. Do you guys know you can't climb a wall?
I mean,
I do, because I try every once in a while just
Really?
to see if maybe I have the power yet. But
I definitely tried in my youth and it didn't work.
I've never tried. I feel left out. Next. FOMO.
This one is less of a line and more of why this doesn't serve any portion of this movie, which is where she tells him to check the abdomen on a guy that she can't really see very well. And then they check it and they're like, oh, good call. He also has internal bleeding while she's doing. Okay, hold on. This just reminded me, because I didn't get to talk about this with the CPR, because there was so much CPR happening in this movie. That she's doing the CPR on this guy in the middle of the street while everything else is going on during the big warehouse fire thing. And then she has like a vision through it and stops doing CPR on the guy. And then when she regains herself, she starts doing it on him again. And then someone's like, hey, we need you. And she just looks down at him and says, you're fine. And then walks away. And he is. He's fine. He's alive. It's just that is she's just like doing it. And then suddenly she's like, as soon as I'm done, you're okay. When I decide it's time for me to stop, that's when you get to live.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very bad. But yeah, I mean, this movie's full of bad dialogue. It'd be hard to pick. You know, I had a few there. I could go on forever, but let's move on to our worst actor. And I'm going to start here. And you guys may feel the same as me. But for me, it's Dakota Johnson. I mentioned already my issues with her in general. This movie is it's like a thesis statement on why she kind of sucks part of the time. So that's my, and I already talked about it before, so I'm not going to go too far into depth.
Yeah, she's in contention for me. I have one that's slightly worse, but like she's probably my number 3. But like this movie has a lot of bad performances. It has some good ones, but it has a lot of bad ones. So like I do not, she is the central figure. So like obviously if her performance doesn't work, the movie doesn't work, and her performance doesn't work. There are moments though that I'm like, there's moments where I'm like, okay, like it's not all egregious. Whereas there's another actor where every single thing they said I didn't like. But Kelsey, was Dakota Johnson your pick? Any thoughts on
she was close. She was definitely a very close second. I totally get why. I assumed she was going to be someone's pick here, because it really is like, she is the backbone of this whole thing, and it's just not working. But there was something redeemable in my eyes about her performance, whereas another actor in this, I really just like got so annoyed every time they spoke. So I had to give it to the other person.
Who is that person?
Oh, I'll tell you. And it's not very fair, and I understand that, but it's Sydney Sweeney.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, we've talked about it, but yeah.
I was just so annoyed with this performance and this casting, and it was just making me groan. And it's not 100% her fault at the end of the day. So
yeah,
I agree. I feel the same way. She was close for me, but she didn't hit. I didn't choose her because I feel like it's just a matter of she was miscast. I feel like she did what they needed her, what they asked her to do, but it did. A lot of her stuff did annoy me. It did make me laugh that she apologized. How often she apologized, how that character did. I thought that was something that did work for me a little bit, but for the most part, yeah, it just didn't work for me at all.
Yeah, I said a little earlier, like I think it's a casting issue more so than it is herself. Like I don't think she's a terrible actress, but like she clearly this is her worst role I've seen her in. But I do think a lot of it is just because she's miscast. She's my number 2 worst, and Dakota Johnson's my number 3. I'm surprised this was neither of your number ones. Mine's Tahar Rahim. I think he's really bad, and it's like part of it's the ADR, which makes his scenes really, really bad. But like for a villain, like usually in the bad movies, at least the villain's memorable. Like Morbius, Matt Smith is the best part of it because he's memorable. He's got like gravitas. At least being a villain, there's something easy you can do. But every single line is very serious, and everything he says is very monotone, and I'm going to drain the life out of you. I bet you didn't know it was your last day, and everything is also being projected 2 seconds after his mouth is moving and actually making the words. So it aids to the bad performance. Again, I don't think any of those three actors are doing well, but like Tahar Rahim, every time he's on screen, I'm just like rolling my eyes, rubbing my temples, because it's just like, I don't know. And I think it's also the fall from grace, right? Dakota Johnson's been bad, so I kind of expected it could be. Sydney Sweeney, she sticks in her own lane, so I knew being outside her lane, it might not work. But Tahar Rahim, I mean, he was Golden Globe nominated for The Mauritanian. Like, he's a good actor. He was in Napoleon. He's great. So the fact that he's giving this performance is even more surprising for me. I just think the villain is such a downfall. And we haven't talked at all about the villain, which is why I figured we'd save it for now, because I was going to bring him up. But I just think it's such a bland villain. And, like, the thing is, he wears a mask through a lot of it. That fixes your ADR. All you have to do is reshoot the scenes with him in the mask, and the ADR is fixed. Instead, you're trying to edit around it, and it makes it so awkward and uncomfortable. But also the way he's speaking, the ADR, because it's so lethargic and monotonish, I think it's hard to pair it up to any of the scenes because it's so, like, the cadence just doesn't work. I don't know. I really hate his performance. And these are all actors who are working right now, and they might see this video, and I am also a working actor. Kelsey's also a working actor. So, like, we respect the craft. We love our fellow actors, but it is also worth noting that this is not his best work or any of their best works. But we do respect the people, but the performance was not great. So yeah, that's my pick. I don't know how you feel about
he was not on my radar simply because I just forget about him. If he's not in the suit, I don't really remember that he's there. And also because I feel like the ADR had a lot to do with it, and maybe I felt like maybe it wasn't his fault so much. He was just not memorable. So that probably was why he didn't really hit it up there. But I would say he's probably 2 or 3 for me on bad acting.
Yeah, Kelsey, any thoughts on Tahar Rahim or the villain in general?
Ezekiel? Yeah, I think he was just not on my radar, mostly because I knew how kind of butchered he was in the editing room. But now that you bring up some really valid points still, when like the performance, the short snippets of performance where it is just like him talking and actually saying the words that he's saying, like, it is very redundant and all very much in one place, where it is like very, very boring and like Matt said, very forgettable. So
yeah, I think that's the thing, is it's boring. You hit the nail on the head, the B word, the boring. Because like Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney aren't great in this movie, but at least like I'm entertained because they're also surrounded by other people. Tahar Rahim, all his sequences too, the actors don't do a good job feeding off of him either. So it just doesn't, he's not given any sort of energy to reciprocate off of, or no one's reciprocating his energy. So it's all a mess. But I think we all nailed 3 pretty bad performances, but let's highlight some good. Let's talk about our best actor who redeemed the material. Yeah. Matt, you started with worst. Start with best.
Okay. I actually think that this is going to surprise you guys based on 2 things you guys have already said. And that is because my actor who elevated material is actually going to be Zasha Mamet, David Mamet's daughter.
Whoa, okay.
She here's why. I know. And you were right, like they didn't explain her character very much. And you were saying that, and Dylan, you were saying that the other people didn't really play off him very well, which would be her as well. However, as ridiculous as the thing she was doing in the movie was, like the fact that she, from a dream, was able to get pictures of these 3 people, age them down 10 years while they were wearing masks, which made them look identical to the way they looked in the other thing, just without masks. And all of this, all the things she was doing was ridiculous. But she was, to me, the thing she was doing was the most interesting part of the movie for me. And I found myself wishing I could spend more time with that character. And I thought that because she wasn't part of the rest of the ridiculousness, she was able to just kind of like,
she was like a beacon
of
her own
hope. Character. Yeah, like she was this thing. So for me, it was her. Like she felt exactly. I think that's right. She felt like a beacon of hope in this movie. Plus, I really like her. I like her in Girls, and so that was pretty much it.
That's fair. Yeah, I just those scenes are just so bogged down by him for me that I can't enjoy her as much as I wish I could have. But it's a good pick. Yeah. Kelsey, who's your pick for best actor?
Matt, I said it when I walked out of the theater during me and Dill's first review. I said the lady in the chair was the best part for me. And once again, I am 100% agreeing with you. She is also my favorite actor who elevated this movie. How do you pronounce her name again?
I think it's, hold on, I have it written down here so I can remember. It's Zasha. She pronounces it
like Sasha with a Z. Nice.
Yeah.
Zasha. Got it. Yeah. Zasha Mamet. Yeah, she just kind of showed up and she knew the job that needed to be done. Like she just she just like she nailed it. She didn't give too much, too little. Like she gave the right amount that made you want to like spend more time with her, which is why I wish there was some kind of like back and forth between them about their past or, you know, whatever the fuck.
Right. No, I agree. And she made, here's the thing. The things that she was doing was so ridiculous, but you did not feel like she made it feel like it was actually happening. So it made it feel less ridiculous that she was aging down a dream picture from his mind 10 years. With the masks off now. It made it feel less ridiculous because she made it seem possible. Yeah, so I'm so happy that you're there with me on that. Yeah. So Dylan, you're the odd man out. What do you got?
Well, you'd be surprised because no, I didn't pick it out. No, I wish I could have also picked it because then we could have had a three-peat. But I don't know if that's ever happened with a guest where we all pick the same best. Maybe it has. I don't know. It probably has. But
remember when we did Dungeons and Dragons and we all said Thora Birch's name at the same time?
Yes. I do love Isabella Merced, so I had to give her a shout out, but I just don't think she does enough for me to say she's like great in it. I think she's better in other things. But my person was pretty clear for me. I think Adam Scott does the job perfectly well. Like, I think he does perfectly fine. He comes in, does his thing. He's a supporting character, but like every time he's on screen, there's an energy to it. I think his lines that he delivers would have been bad in other people's like deliveries, but I think he understands it. He understands what type of movie he's in. He's there. He doesn't feel like he's bored there either, but he does have this nonchalantness that we love of everything Adam Scott does, where it's kind of like, oh, like that wasn't supposed to happen. Are we doing it? Okay, yeah. Like, oh, now we just won't order that Chinese food anymore. Like there's these like funny little bits that like I think he does really well. I think his playful nature. I think he brings the best out of Dakota Johnson in those moments where he's kind of like poking at her, where it's like something about like you will find your personality. Oh, I guess that's for you. Like something like that, where it feels natural. It feels like this is the guy, and he has to be Uncle Ben. I think he like has this really good, like kind of sturdy, good head on his shoulders. So I think he's great. I think he does exactly what's asked of him, and he does it perfectly well. It's not his best performance, obviously. Severance is that. But I think he is great. I think he's fine, perfectly great. Yeah, there's really no notes for his character, for his portrayal, and he's just used sparingly enough to where it's not overload. But he is kind of the comedic relief in a sense, but in a good, natural way. It doesn't feel like forced comedy either. So I think he's perfectly fine in this role.
I will correct you and say he was meant to be the comedic relief, but the rest of the movie was the comedic relief.
Yes, the editor was the comedic relief. The fireworks were the comedic relief. Yeah.
I agree. I think he was great. I think that he hit it on the head with that he delivers really bad dialogue really well. Like it didn't feel quite as egregious, even though you knew that it was not good. And he did his best with it. So I agree. I think he's great. I didn't have a single problem with him in this movie.
Yeah. Kelsey, any thoughts on Mr. Ben Scott? Adam Scott. Sorry, I called him Ben because of Parks and Rec. Sorry.
No, I literally was like, I was watching him and I was like, is his name in real life Ben Wyatt or Adam Scott? I always forget like what the character is from Parks and Rec. But yeah, he just kind of has this like aloofness about him that like makes like kind of any dialogue that comes out of his mouth like seem like very real and very relaxed. Like, he's kind of like he's great for projects like that. Like he has an audition tape for The Office of him as Jim. He obviously was on Parks and Rec. Like he's just like great with like he just adds a relatability to all of his characters that make them seem like, guys you would, encounter in real life. And I think that this movie definitely needed that more than anything, considering they wrote Dakota Johnson's character to like literally be an alien from outer space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Cool.
All right. So Dylan, let's start with you on this last superlative, which is our train wreck moment of the movie.
I think we've touched on it, but I want to bring it up again. The game where they're guessing the child and sharing their favorite memories, and she just pulls out a blank card and says, "Who wrote this?" And she goes, "I did, because I didn't know my mother. She died in childbirth." Oh, awkward. Not that you're gonna die in childbirth. Like it doesn't happen a lot. I mean, it happens a lot, but you're gonna be okay. Like what? And then like eating the sausage, and then the balloon pops. Like this is like the weirdest sequence ever because it goes on, but like they play 2 rounds of the game after that too. It's like, is it Sam? No. Is it Robert? No. Is it Richard Jr.? No. Okay, well you guys didn't guess it. I'm like, 3 strikes and you're out? Is it in baseball? Like, this is a guessing game. There's 20 people at the party. I want to hear the guesses. Someone would have probably guessed Peter, but I don't know. It's the weird, that whole, and then Ben Adam Scott just walks in. Well, he is Ben. He's Uncle Ben. Ben walks in and he's like, all right, we got to go, emergency. And she's like, oh, and she like gets up slowly and just kind of walks out. And it's just so weird. That whole like 5 minutes is just the weirdest, most uncomfortable thing ever. Like, never makes me want to ever go to a baby shower, which I don't think I'll ever have to, but like, no thanks, bye, nope.
Yeah, I mean, we already talked about that, but yeah, it's a weird ass. She's a psychopath. I don't. they gave us the wrong information about this person that we were supposed to be rooting for.
At least make it a bit and like put the empty fortune in there or something. Be like, I got an empty fortune, so I figured I'd use it because like, no mom. I'm like at least something like that would have been like a little cheekier. Like she has like a dark sense of humor, but here it's just like, are you trying to bum us out? Or are you trying to have that dark sense of humor? Because it's clearly not coming across as humor. Like if she was like, get it? Because like, and then it'd be like, oh, you're unstable, but like you're going through something. But here it's just like, no, she died in childbirth. So like, like it's weird. It's no.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Kelsey.
My frame wreck moment.
Do you have any thoughts on this that you haven't already shared? And if not, go ahead and your train wreck moment of the movie.
It's a great pick, Dyl. You're absolutely right. Like that scene is such a chaotic mess, and it's again like just trying to prove to the audience once again that this woman is like very awkward and off-putting, and it's just like we already got that. Like we've seen enough. We don't need another example of like how terrible she is at just normal day-to-day human interactions.
But just living.
So my frame wreck moment.
It's actually called a train wreck moment.
Oh, really?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I was right. Haha, joke's on you. My train wreck moment, I was dying. I was trying to pick between 2. And I think I'm going to go with actually, there's like a specific moment during her Peru montage where she gets pushed into the water and now she's like cycling through all these memories, and she is like encountering like her mom and like discovering for the whole reason why her mom went to Peru, which is like me, the audience, I like didn't really care for because I was just like, bitch wanted to study spiders. I don't know. Like unless you teased the reason being that she was on the hunt for a cure for an illness, like I wasn't that invested in why she was at Peru. Like Dakota Johnson wanted us to be so bad. But then when she discovers that like, oh, she was searching for a cure for an illness she has this like awful, like fake cry where she's like, and like buries her face in her hands and is like, I didn't know you were doing this all for me. Like you really did love me. And then and then the mom like in the vision is like able to like see her, and then they like share this like hug. And I was just like, I hate this. I really, really hate this actually with like every fiber in my being.
It's the opposite of the other problem that they've had where they keep giving us the Chekhov's gun and then not having it go off. This is them having it go off without building up the fact that she thought her mom hated her throughout the rest of the film. We don't learn that until they're in this vision and she's like, why did you hate me so much? It's okay. Had they built that up before, like shown us like that's part of the problem, like that's part of her emotional issue. didn't understand why her mom cared for her so little that she would go to the Amazon and that she would do whatever and all that stuff. They didn't build that up. So when we get to this, it's an emotional payoff for something that they did not set up. And that's the problem. So yes, I agree with that one as well. Dyl, how do you feel about that one?
I agree. I mean, that whole sequence with Peru in general is just, it's where our worst line comes from too, Matt. It's like, it's just, and it's so quick. It's like this cool excursion that could have you could have spent time there, but it's just so rushed and there's so much that happens that it's a whirlwind because then we're right back in it with the action. It's like, oh, there's a Pepsi Cola sign. We're in the end of the movie already. So, I was even watching it. I was like, did I skip something? No, we're already leaving Peru. Okay.
I also love that when she hugs her and when she comes back, she's like, I was in there in the room. He's like, yes, that's your power now. And that's all we know. That's all we get. We don't know anything else about what happened. So yeah. For me, my train wreck moment, we did talk about this as well. It's basically everything from the hospital room at the end to through the rest of the movie. The weird, they're mine now. They belong to me. That whole shit. To like the I'm going to predict that you're about to sneeze and then smirk about it. I'm going to smirk about the fact that my friend is going to die and his brother's going to die and all that stuff. I'm going to.
Oh, hello.
Sure. And then yeah, all that, everything basically from when she gets to the hospital room with her little blindfold on all the way through the rest of the movie. That's my
Matt, as someone who's watched Exorcist Believer, and I don't know if Kelsey's watched it yet either, but
I have not watched Exorcist Believer.
Okay, never mind. I was going to ask you a question, but it'll spoil that movie. So if you know, audience, what question I was going to ask. Wink, 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 wink. All right. Do we get to our score now, Matthew?
We get to our score now, yeah. I'd like to hear from you, Dylan.
Okay. I actually wrote it down. So this is my score.
Oh, it's a blank piece of
paper. See? Yeah, see what I did? Yeah, no, I thought that'd be a fun bit. It says 3 out of 5 on it, but yeah, no, that's my bit. That's
for me, I gave it 4 successful CPR sessions out of 5 because that one guy did die.
Yes, okay. Kelsey,
that's really good. That's really creative. I gave it 4 madams out of 5 webs.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Perfect.
There Sweet. It is.
Great.
We can talk about trash more. I don't think it makes the list because at this point, anything under a 5 doesn't hit it. But our Mount Trashmore is the Mount Rushmore of bad movies. What do we have on there right now, Dyl?
We have The Room, we have Troll 2, we have Plan 9 from Outer Space, and we have Ben and Arthur. I think this has a good enough idea to make it better than those movies, but also the execution is bad enough to where the so bad it's good. It is very bad. So I don't think it's quite at that level of it's the best so bad it's good movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, Matt, what would you say? Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think
and I know, Kelsey, you haven't seen all 4 of those, but or have you? I don't know if you've seen any of those, but do you think this belongs on a Mount Rushmore of so bad it's good movies, or do you think it's just so bad it's good, but give it some time to marinate?
Right.
I mean, personally, yes, this movie is bonkers to me.
Right.
I think that with time, this movie could become the modern day The Room.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, and especially because of the genre it's in. We haven't really talked about that, but superhero movies have been kind of on a high. We had Morbius. People didn't like Venom. I like Venom. But I do think there's a lot of it's rising so much that when you have this, it really is a generational thing. Last generation was Fantastic Four 2015, and now it's this. This feels like the big marquee landmark downfall of the superhero genre, but it seems to be on its way back up still because we still got Spider-Verse movies down the horizon, and they just announced a new phase for Marvel, so it's on the up and up. But I think superhero movies in general are declining, which is also why this is kind of not as egregious. Whereas if this came out in 2019, I bet people would have lost their minds even more, honestly. But this also came out in February, so it was very easy for people to just kind of forget about. Which brings us to legacy. I mean, Matt, we haven't really seen any of its legacy, but do you have anything to add to the legacy of Madam
just
Web?
That it was basically panned. Most people didn't like it, and and that it's probably not going to get a sequel that it thought it was going to get. That's
I
really
will tell
all
you
it
right now, for the enjoyment factor alone, it's not in my bottom 5 movies of the year. Like, I genuinely think there are 5 worse movies for me that I've seen this year, just based on I wouldn't want to watch them again. Like, I think this is more entertaining. I don't even want to list them because I don't want to piss people off, but there's some movies, but big titles that I don't enjoy as much as I enjoy this. So I don't know. We'll have to find out at the end of the year if this will make the Pickle Awards 5. I actually looked at my ranking, and it still technically would based on star rating, but like we'll see because I do enjoy it. Any last thoughts, Kelsey, on Madam Web?
I really enjoyed talking about it with you guys. I feel like this has been a long time coming, and I hope, fingers crossed, you had me back on again because I enjoyed myself. And you could tell the more mad I got and the more passionate I got about certain stuff, the more Jersey I got. So
yes,
trial and errors.
No, I love it.
Poughkeepsie.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, as Matt predicted. But I do think it's a great discussion to have, especially because it is still so fresh. So people are hopefully going to be coming around to it as it's on Netflix, maybe for the spooky season, because it does have it's webs and spiders, spooky season could fit. ADR is pretty scary. Matt, any last thoughts on Madam Web before we put this web to bed?
No, nothing else. I think we said all that needs to be said.
Yeah, thank you, Kelsey, for this. This is great.
We need to talk about next month.
Yeah. No, I was just giving
Kelsey
your flowers. Let's say that for last. Let's tease next month, and then we'll bow down to our queen down there. Matt, what's next month?
Next month we're gonna have it's our spooky season month. We are gonna be honoring a king of the spooky season, M. Night Shyamalan. We're going to be talking about Old, and we're going to have special guest, oh my God. I just said 2 wrong names. I'm so sorry, Carly. Who we're having on.
You went through the Rolodex of Dyl Pickle Movie Network guests and hosts, and you were like, all right, there's the K. It's Carrie. No, it's Kelsey. It's Carly. Because I also do the same thing. I've called Kelsey Carly, I've called Carly Carrie, and I've called Carrie Kelsey. So it happens. But I will not say your initials.
Carly, but Carly is coming on.
the K's. The only positive. Never mind. I'm not going to make that joke. I was not going to make that joke.
Don't.
Nope. You know what joke I was going to make. I'm not going to make that.
With a group of K's, okay?
Yep. Nope. You're good. But the only K's we accept here are strikeouts and our Kelsey, Carrie, Carly trio. There we go. The only K's we like. All right, Matt. Anything else? We loved having Kelsey on.
Oh, I loved having. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have you back on. Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Yes. Find a movie you love so much that you hate so much that you love, and we'll definitely put it on the roster for some time. And if there's another Marvel movie we could cross over, I mean, we are talking about a pretty bad one next week on Monday. Next Monday, you can find our review of Howard the Duck. It's not going to be structured like a FRAMEWRECK episode. We're not going to give superlatives, but we are going to talk about it like we did this, just kind of discuss the film and review it. And it'll be part of our first Avenger Files, where we're going back through every single movie since the 1970s and talking about them leading up till present day. So we're gonna eventually get to like the heavy hitters like the Blades and Spider-Man trilogy for Raimi and all that. But right now we're still kind of trudging through the TV films, and we finally made it to the first theatrically released one that we're gonna be talking about, which is Howard the Duck. So that's gonna be really fun. Matt will be on for that, and we'll get to talk more bad Marvel then, or maybe it's good Marvel. I haven't watched it yet, so maybe we'll love it. I don't know. Matt, had you seen it before or no?
Oh, I've seen it lots of times, but I also saw it when I was a kid a lot of times.
Gotcha.
So I love it.
Yeah, Kelsey and I haven't, so I'm very, very curious. But Kels, any last words from you? I know you already thanked us, but where can they find you, and anything else to share?
You can find me on Marvel-ous Movie Mondays every Monday here on the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. You can find me on a upcoming draft day for maybe someone really special that's on this panel right now. And you can follow me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick. You could check out my TikTok. It's at Kelsey A. Kilp. And my Letterboxd is the same thing as my TikTok at Kelsey A. Kilp.
There you go. And these are Matt and I's socials, just so you have them, just so you can go stalk us and follow us. New York Film Fest season starts tomorrow for me because this is airing on Thursday. So Friday, I will be neck deep in the water with New York Film Festival. So I will be reviewing films nonstop, both here on the channel and on my Letterboxd. So stay tuned for that. And then starting October 1st, Kelsey and I both are doing our 31 Days of Halloween proper, where I have my schedule that we just released on Marvel-ous Movie Mondays. Kelsey hasn't even made her schedule because she does hers randomly, which is going to be fun. So you can check out her TikToks where she will randomly spin a number generator wheel type thing to determine what movie she's watching. We announce those titles on Monday. Kelsey's doing sequels, prequels, remakes. I am doing the movies that you, the audience, picked, as well as some new releases like Joker and Venom and all that. And then Matt also has some 31 days. You're doing more like your spooky season kind of extends beyond just October, though, right, Matt?
My spooky season I do from my sister's birthday, which is August 30th, through Halloween. And I basically try to get as many in as I can. I don't have a specific number. I just kind of watch. And sometimes it's shows. So like I did 2 different Mike Flanagan show series this time, but they only count as one. Sadly, they just take longer. But yeah, so I'm nice. I just do that. I go through a bunch.
No, but he does it on his Letterboxd. He does log them all. So go check them out to see what his star ratings are and just to see what he's been watching. And then if you want to ask him about any of those movies, let us know in this comment section, because when me, Matt, and Carly record in October, maybe we'll reference some just spooky season watching we've been doing as well. Because in October, I like to celebrate all the horror movies everyone's watching. So Kelsey and I will have our own special talking about our 31 days. And Matt, Carly, and I can chat about ours as well, because I know she's doing it and I know Chad's doing it and Carrie's doing it. They're doing 61 days. So everyone's doing it here on the Dyl Pickle Movie Network, which is so fun. Everyone's doing it. You should too. This is a peer pressuring situation. We're all doing it. You should do it too. Watch some spooky movies in October and make this one of them if you haven't seen it. If you made it this far, you got it all spoiled for you, but please add it to your list. Anything else, anyone to add for Madam Web before we put it to bed?
Let's put it to bed.
All right, let's wrap up that web and say goodnight. And thank you all so much. And thank you, Kelsey, as always. And we'll see you all soon on Marvel-ous Movie Mondays with this same trio as part of our Marvel-ous FRAMEWRECK.
What a story, Mark.